My name's Stan Jones. I'm President of Complete College America. I'm going to do a short synopsis since most of you know most of this stuff, and then we'll pass out a little quiz at the end of the conference. So let me just start. I think you know we're now in 33 states and the District of Columbia, and the territory of the Northern Mariana Islands has been our most recent addition. About a couple years ago, we focused on what we called our game changers. There's only 5, and as we've worked, we've developed strategies where we see significant returns and results. Not 5% or 10% returns, but doubling, tripling, quadrupling the rate of success for these strategies. And we don't have 101 things that you can do about college completion. We have 5. And this is Coreq remediation is one of the 5. We didn't invent this. We discovered it from many of the people you'll hear today who were doing good work in their colleges. One of the places we always start, and you should start, if you haven't already, is data. And we are amazed. I was amazed when I saw the numbers, when we collect data now from over 30 states. I was amazed when I saw how many students start in remedial courses. It's not different, really, from state to state, from community college to community college. And I was also amazed at how many did not complete their first math and their first English course in the first year, for which they were preparing for. And this holds true across the country. But I'm also amazed when we sit down with individual colleges, like we've been invited to Tennessee and to other states, and we sit down with individual colleges, we give them their data, and they say, well, this isn't our data. And we say, well, it is your data. Your state agency gave it to us, and it's your data, because they see that the students in their course pass their course. They don't see what happened to that student next, in the next course or the next course. And so the power of data really helps educate people as to what the problem is. And each institution should have that data. Most of the states here have this data for those institutions at the national level. But I can't underestimate the power. Otherwise, this becomes a discussion of, well, I said this and you said this, and who's right? You know, I used to be a state legislator, and that's always how it was. I talked to a teacher the other day, and she said this, therefore that must be. Or my son went to this college and had this experience, that must be this way. So we never let, the facts get in the way of a really good argument. So we're trying to change that, and you need to have the data, and you need to share the data with the colleges you're working with. So corequisite remediation, again, I could be in any state in the country and say 60% of the students in the community colleges start in remedial work, and that would probably be true. But we have a large number of students in remedial work at the four-year colleges. The 19% is at four-year colleges. For way too many students, this is their first and last college experience. There's a 30% no-show rate for students referred to remedial classes. It's kind of like the Scarlet R. They didn't like math in high school. They end up in remedial math. They don't want to tell their parents they're taking a remedial course. They certainly don't want to tell their friends, and they quit. And so this is really, to begin with, psychologically, I'm going to college, and all of a sudden I'm in a remedial course. And this really pinpoints why corequisite works. Most students who actually take a remedial course pass that course. So they could be better courses, but that's really not the problem. The problem is attrition. And as you can see, you might start out with 10 students and end up with 1 that has made it all the way through enrollment and completion. And we do lose some that don't pass the course, but we lose many more that just quit. They said, I've had enough, I can't take another remedial math course. Even those that get through the sequence say, I'm going to push off that math course as long as I can. And so this is really about attrition. And so it's not really a criticism about the curriculum in these courses, or the teachers, or the students. It's about these attrition points. Most community colleges have had 3 levels of math, 3 levels of English, and if you're starting in the 3rd level of math, which is usually 5th grade math, decimals, percentages, which isn't easy, you have a 1% chance of ever graduating or getting a certificate or degree from any college, a 1% chance if you're starting 3 levels low in mathematics. And so we really have to question, why are we doing this? And again, this is true across the country. I say to people, you are special, but then again, you're not, because these are the same issues every community college, every 4-year open admission college is facing. This I thought was remarkable. This is ATD data, Achieving the Dream data. 70% of students who place into remedial math fail to even enroll in a gateway course within 2 years. So they don't even get to go, 70%. And so we lose them before they even get to what we would consider college. This is Texas, a big state. Every year they start 40,000 students in remediation. Within 3 years, only 15% have actually completed that first level math course. So this is just huge attrition that happens. And these numbers, while they're bigger in Texas, they're not different state to state to state, remarkably. And actually, I was talking to the tennis delegation when this concept of this corequisite kind of came to us. And it's really very simple. Instead of delivering remediation as a prerequisite you have to do before you can get into that English course or that math course, you think about it as a corequisite, something you do alongside that math or that English course. It's just really that simple. And it's a principle, really. There's not a specific model. You'll hear about lots of different ways to do it. But it's a principle of really taking the college level course with support that's required. And there's probably any different ways that you'll hear that it can be done. And it's essentially having more time on task for those students. More help, more time on task. And time on task has long been a good way to help students. Some students stay 45 minutes after class. For others, we were in South Dakota, the University of South Dakota said we make this simple. We have English 101, we have English 101A. English 101 is 3 class hours a week. English 101A is 4. That's how they do it. There's another one that they essentially have a 2-hour lab. They charge a lab fee of $75, which isn't too expensive. It's required. They don't say, well, you can go to the lab. You have to go to the lab. That's part of the course and part of the support. And those people that have done that say, as important as the computers are in the lab, the mentors in the lab are more important. So there are different ways to do this. Stretching the course out over 2 semesters has been fairly popular. There's not one single way to do corequisite. The principle is putting students in these classes. These are just two of the people that you're going to be hearing from today, the Community College of Baltimore County and Austin Peay County. And you can see the significant results that they've achieved, and these are longstanding programs. And there are other great examples across the country, but these are the 2 that we traditionally highlight, and we have both representatives here that put those programs in place that you'll hear from in a minute. One of the newer issues that's come along has been math pathways. There's been this assumption that everybody should take college algebra. I'm not quite old enough, but before my time, everybody in high school, Latin was required. It's no longer, as you know, required. In many high schools, it's not even taught. College algebra is like the Latin of its day, and it's actually not even as helpful as Latin was. But our mathematicians, and I was actually just on the phone this week with two nationally known mathematicians who both supported this argument that the real purpose of college algebra is for calculus, and only for calculus. It is not for anything else. And so it's not that if you're taking college algebra, it also helps you for psychology. It really doesn't. It's more abstract. Doesn't give you the skills for psychology or accounting. It gives you the skills to be prepared for calculus. So, many colleges are starting to develop these other strategies around statistics, around quantitative reasoning. I think you'll hear in a minute. Some colleges have kind of dusted off the covers and brought back technical math. Some of you may remember technical math, and it kind of got swept aside because it couldn't be transferred. And people are bringing that back saying, well, gee, we've got people that want to be welders or machinists. They have no intention whatsoever of transferring to a four-year college. They do need to know geometry. They need to know a lot of trig. And so they need math, but they don't need a transferable math. They need a math that's relevant to what they're studying. And so they've had great success at bringing back tech math. Placement. This also is a newer understanding. And I will admit, we started down the wrong path when we started talking about placement 5 years ago. And there's a couple common tendencies when you first start to talk about placement. One tendency is to say, well, gee, shouldn't we have a single cut score across all our campuses or a single cut score across the state? Or the other tendency is to say we need a better test that will better tell us who should be in remediation or more diagnostic. And I think we have since learned that both those are the wrong approach. That many of you administer Accuplacer or Compass. They're $2 tests. I say they're the best $2 tests you can administer, and they're $2 worth of value. They're not statistically valid. Many of the students that are taking the test are surprised. They don't know they're taking the test. They don't really sometimes know why they're taking the test or the consequences of taking the test. If they were out for 10 years, maybe you didn't even see a practice test. You don't even know the material you're being tested on. And so consequently, we won't do it today, but if we passed out one of the tests, Accuplacer, I would venture to say a significant number of us would not pass it. But if we had a practice test or had a couple hours to brush up, we would pass it. So this is what, at most places, it looks like. There's a cut score somewhere there, and 60-70% end up in remediation. That cut score becomes quite important. It's a single number, cannot be justified. It has consequences. I either test into the gateway course or I test into remediation, some level of remediation. And we're saying no matter how you change your placement process, a better test, bringing in high school GPA, another process, makes no difference if at the end of the day it still looks like this. You might sleep a little better at night knowing that maybe you have more of the right 30% in college level work. But if you still have 60-70% of your students in remediation, you have not made progress. And so we've been advocating something that looks more like this, which is statistically is more defensible, which is at some level, you can say with some certainty, these students at the upper level could start in college level work without support. And at some low level, we know that you really do need a lot of help and you couldn't be in a college level work. But that middle, you could be in college level work with support. And so here the consequences are not so great. So if you don't test into the gateway class, instead you test into the middle, the worst thing that happens to you is you're still in that gateway class and you get support. Well, that's not a bad consequence, to get support while you're in that gateway class. So that's how we'd like people to think about it. If you go changing tests, bringing in GPA, doesn't solve those problems. You really need to say most of our students, the default placement needs to be in these courses. And you need to change your math. And so Ivy Tech is really the first Indiana statewide community college. They keep telling me different numbers. It's either 25, 26, or 27 campuses, depending on the day you ask them across the state of Indiana. They have implemented corequisite. They've implemented these math pathways. They brought back tech math. They've taken college algebra completely out of their nursing programs. I forget, maybe 15% of their students are in college algebra, rather than that being the overwhelming course that students took. And most students are in this middle range that they put in college-level courses with support. And so this is what's happened statewide to Ivy Tech, not at an individual campus, not with some sections at an individual campus, but across their, who's one, Mary or Rob, how many campuses do you really have? Okay, 24 recognized, but they've snuck some other campuses in there. But as you can see, and we worked with Ivy Tech, they were good friends. They muddled around in those first 3 years, trying different strategies. And then they hit upon corequisite, and you can see how dramatic that change is, both in terms of percentages and also in terms of the numbers of students that are no longer starting in math remediation. And this is just remarkable. They've done this statewide. Georgia's poised to do this next fall. Tristan, Tennessee has been piloting. You'll hear from him. They're poised to do this next fall. West Virginia has been working on this as well. And so in very short order, we're going to have 3 or 4 states that will have done this statewide. And there is no question in my mind they will get results that look like this. And there's no question in my mind Ivy Tech results will look even better than this. They continue to improve because, as you can see, they did it fast, but they're continuing to improve their alignment. They're continuing to improve their understanding of how this works. Their instructors are beginning to get it, that this really does work. And so this will only get better. But if across the country we could cut in half the numbers of students in remedial math, that would be huge. But it is possible.